think our work here is done.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of Unsolicited Advice. My name is Jacob Sobers. I'm sitting down with Rob Eldridge. What is it? Without dissertation?
The initials that follow my name are LISW. Basically, what that means is I'm an independently licensed clinical social worker.
Okay, wonderful. And
Kristen
Hewit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we're going to talk about ADD, ADHD, and dyslexia, and Renaissance methods of diagnosing and curing, correct? And, right, I'm the dictator of what we're going to talk about. Mr. Eldridge, I'd like to open up with a question for you. What is the etymology of your name? What is Eldridge? I think that's a great last name. Are you Swiss, German?
The name comes from Ellis Island. When my father's family came over from Russia, the name was Eldridge. And when my grandfather told them that at Ellis Island, they said, "Oh, so it's Eldridge." And so at least that's the family myth.
Okay, right on. And how old are you, sir, if you don't mind me asking?
That's fine. I'm 63.
Great. And how long were you practicing before you were semi-retired?
Ooh, good question. Let's say over 40 years.
Over 40 years. Wow, that's quite a long time. And then, Kristen, how long have you been in Mr. Eldridge's support group?
I found the group about 3 years ago, give or take, and have been going pretty consistently for that period of time.
That's amazing. That's great. So when you guys do a group for ADHD, dyslexia, and ADD, is there any other, do you guys have like a title you like to give those things? Like, is it diagnosis?
Yeah, and I'm really, really glad that you brought that up. There's a bit of language that I want to share with you and with the listeners, and that is a term that I made up. It's not a clinical diagnosis. There's nowhere you're going to find this. It's not going to exist in any book. So this is very much the world according to Rob. But the term I made up is a stimulus response disorder. And I brought the definition with me today so I could read it.
Great.
And so here it is. A stimulus response disorder, or SRD, is not an actual clinical diagnosis. It's a term I made up and use as an alternative to the APA, that's the American Psychiatric Association's confusing nomenclature. It denotes a disorder in the production and or allocation of neurotransmitters that affects the way people of either normal or above normal intelligence perceive, interpret, store, retrieve, and therefore respond to stimuli, resulting in a lifelong constellation of unique strengths and deficits encompassing perception, cognition, learning, emotion, behavior, and or social adaptation. Whether this genetic disorder represents a positive or a negative depends on how it is used. So where I come from in my own world, I call autism, Asperger's, Tourette's syndrome, ADD, ADHD, and specific learning disorders. All those fall under that umbrella. All those.
The SDR umbrella.
The SRD.
SRD, excuse me.
Touch of dyslexia there, huh?
Yeah, dyslexia, always kidding.
Right. So we are here, the three of us. In my mind's eye, we are 3 SRD adults having a conversation about what it means to be neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent. I love that. That's great. So those are the autism, everything you just listed are what you generally help in the support group?
Correct.
And there's about 500 people total who are in the support group?
There are 500 people plus or minus who have signed up for the support group,
right.
But the vast majority of those folks never show.
Yeah, right.
We tend to get about anywhere from 10 to 20 people on an average Wednesday night.
On an average meeting?
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll just jump in and add that while I have come to understand that really large, very packed and dense definition,
Yeah.
I will say, like, if you're hearing that for the first time, that has to be probably pretty overwhelming. And if I were to sum it down into a few words, I would say a hypersensitivity to stimuli.
Right.
And I think, like, kind of just to take that nugget out of it and kind of wrap your head around that, and then start to unpack that larger definition has been helpful to me.
Yeah.
And I will say that, like, while we do talk about all of the things that Rob mentioned, it certainly is a focus on ADHD, and the group is called ADHD, or a support group for ADHD, because how else would we find each other? That's our common language in society. But I think when you come to the group and you hear what Rob is saying and his perspective, then it starts to make sense. And then in the group, we use this language and talk about it from this perspective.
Right, and so I got a chance to look over that before you guys came. And I looked over, I actually sent it to my dad. He loved it. He thought it was great because he also is, I'm going to do it again. I almost did it. SRD. SDR.
Stimulus response disorder.
Stimulus response disorder.
And to simplify it even more, basically, people like us, we don't respond to stimuli the way neurotypical people do.
Neurotypical.
That's it. That's
neurodivergent, neurotypical.
right, exactly, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like
What
that
we
background.
used to call right brain, left brain thinkers, right?
Yeah.
Neurotypical people tend to be left brain thinkers. Neurodivergent people tend to be more like right brain thinkers.
Okay, great. And two of the other phrases that you sent me that I loved were the homeostasis,
Mhm.
trying to get back to a level of homeostasis,
Mhm.
and how neurodivergent people tend to need a little more stuff going on to be able to be at homeostasis, whereas
Very good.
neurotypical people need calmer waters.
They're
Yes,
not as sensitive to stimuli as we are.
Right.
So they're easily able, or more easily able, to ignore, tolerate, or adapt to stimuli that we find threatening, or exciting,
Right.
or overwhelming.
And which is why I think some of us thrive. Personally, me, I've been in the service industry for 10 years. Talking about the ADD so much, and you bringing up a fidget tool, I wanted to grab something to rub, and I'm rubbing my keys. I think that's so funny.
Yep.
Carrying around a worry stone, right?
Yep.
I just
Got it
wanted
right
to-
here.
Wow, that's great. I also have one in my car now that I carry, which is cool. And then I started doing that before you sent me that. I saw them at a music festival.
Mm-hmm.
They were selling them at a booth, and just the idea of it really, I was like, oh, that'll help me not Instagram and drive as much, so I'm gonna rub.
Well,
Mhm.
to put it in more clinical terms, what it does is it helps us to either regain or sustain homeostasis,
Right.
which is a sense of calm and peace and being okay with the world.
One time I made an Instagram video. I make a lot of Instagram rant videos on just out of the need to, I don't know, be a weirdo. I made one where I described waking up early with ADD is kind of like a gift, because typically if I wake up at 9 o'clock, and I related it to making tea, a normal person, a neurotypical person, they wake up slowly, they put the tea on, they fill up the whole pot, they put it on the stove at a nice 7, they wait for it to boil, they go about their breathing exercises. Where if you have ADD, you just grab a pot out of the the cupboard, fill it halfway full, throw it on the stove, crank up the high, and spin around in the kitchen while you wait. But if you wake up early, or at least for me typically, if I wake up at 6, there's not a lot of stimuli going on, so it's my brain's not.
You don't feel
I
that
just
pressure?
I don't have ADD. It's from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning. I just don't really have it, and it's kind of nice sometimes to take a break. But then I ramp it up with a bunch of coffee and turn it back on.
I've made a decision that I think that there are 3 stages that we go through. The first stage I call simulation, and that's where we are able to very much simulate what it means to be a neurotypical person. So what were those hours in the morning?
6 to 7:30.
6 to 7:30, you're in simulation. You're simulating what it means to be neurotypical. If we saw you, if we had a video of you during that time, we wouldn't be able to identify that you were any different than anyone else.
Right.
So those periods of time for us, that I call simulation, those exist all the time. The problem is that we don't use our time in simulation wisely to prepare for the next phase of our day-to-day lives, which I call going into ascent. Think about this in terms of like a rocket ship. When we're in simulation, the rocket is sitting on the launching pad.
Right.
When we go into ascent, we're blasting off into orbit. And that time that we spend in ascent is the time when we are interacting with the rest of the world.
Yeah, but almost at like and I might be painting a picture of an overly optimistic and positive picture, and I'm sure like it's not like this for everybody who struggle with it in different ways. But during that time of ascent, when you are present in the world, but you're able to move almost, it seems like a little bit faster, and maybe jump to conclusions a little bit faster, or solve problems a little bit faster. That's when I feel ADD can kind of, or ADHD can kind of be like a superpower.
Absolutely.
But then the last stage is orbit, right?
Correct.
And orbit's where the teacher wants to give you guidance because you're checked out. The teacher wants you to be back in because you're just...
No, actually, orbit happens in one of two ways. We go into orbit, the third phase of our lives, either because we're trying to avoid, escape, or sabotage being in ascent because we're not comfortable and with having all that pressure and having all that, the need to conform to neurotypical standards. Or we go into orbit because we've got an idea, we have a thought, we have a plan, we have a passion. There's something that's burning inside of us, and we want to get to it. So those of us who don't have ADHD, but who are still SRD people, will prepare for our time in ascent while we're in simulation, and we'll use our time in ascent to find the stimulation we need to take us into orbit. So I'm at a meeting and Kristen says something and I go, oh wow, that is so cool. Right? But I don't freak out during the meeting.
No.
Right? Well, that's because I don't have ADHD.
Okay.
People with ADHD
freak out right away.
Exactly.
And they get
so what I do is I write down, I say, oh, that idea Kristen had is so good.
Yeah.
And she'll tell you, I keep a little pad and pen right next to me, and I'll write it down. And then later, when all of my responsibilities are taken care of, when I've made sure that all my I's are dotted, my T's are crossed, right?
Go back to the notebook.
Then I allow myself to go into orbit. And I dissociate. Going into orbit is dissociating from the rest of the world. And so, for example, my wife will ask me, honey, what time will you be home? I'll go, I don't know. Because I'm again, right, exactly.
So, some people, and I normally call it hyperfocus, where nothing else matters. And even just forgetting to eat or sleep or use the bathroom is just not in anywhere in my periphery.
Right.
And I'm just completely obsessed with what it is I'm working on, and it has to be getting done, and I have to achieve it.
I love that you call it hyperfocus, because the whole attention deficit is a scale, right? So sometimes you don't have a much.
No, it's not a scale. It's a misnomer.
It's a misnomer. Okay.
Yeah. We are able to pay attention.
Right.
As well or better than anybody else.
Okay.
There is no, as far as I'm concerned.
No
and
deficit.
again, I'm going to remind whoever's listening here, I'm going to remind you that this is the world according to Rob.
Yeah.
Okay? So, but what I'm telling you is that when we take ownership of something, say it's playing a video game, we can play that stupid video game all night long.
Yeah.
We don't have a problem, right? We don't have a problem
I've been there.
focusing okay.
Yeah.
Our attention. The problem we have is that we only care about the things we care about. So we don't pay attention to math class, to what our neurotypical peers want us to pay attention to.
Right.
And so they say, from their perspective, oh, I see, you have an attention deficit. Well, we don't have an attention deficit.
No.
What we have is a situation where we just don't care.
It's a strong, yeah.
That's reality.
Pretty much it. That is what, so throughout my, I guess, life with ADD, dyslexia, all that, diagnosed in 2nd grade, my parents, not really my parents, my mom wanted me to have every advantage in the world. She wanted me to be the best student I could be, all the best interests in heart. Doctors are saying, put them on a Vyvanse, Ritalin, Ditrana, patch, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And she would. And then she would see a dramatic behavior change in me, low energy, annoyed, not eating.
What those medications do is they dull.
Yeah, they numb you out.
Exactly.
Right, and so through that process of always getting on it and then lying, saying I took it when I didn't really take it, and like all that, and then the flip was when I was a freshman in college and I was going to go to college. I was like, okay, well, maybe I do need whatever advantage I can get, because if I'm actually going to try to do the college thing, I might as well give it my all. So I decided to go to the doctor and get a prescription, and I get prescribed 50 milligram Vyvanse,
Okay.
which to everybody else who I have talked to who has also been prescribed is one of the higher doses I've heard, which is fine. And I took it every day, like prescribed, and then I took a weekend out of town to go visit a friend at another school, and I was like a narcoleptic. I could not stop sleeping, and my jaw hurt all the time because it turned out I was grinding my teeth and not getting REM because I was on such a high dose of stimulant. And ever since then, I haven't touched the stuff, and I've just learned to try to. Well, I was always kind of dealing with it, but now that I'm trying to be a functioning adult, more so than just a knucklehead at high school, it's an interesting journey trying to figure out what helps. For me, it's like exercise is huge. It helps me sleep better. It helps me just be calmer after and before. The coffee addiction is probably not helping. What do you guys think about coffee and ADD?
Well, I mean, I personally love coffee apart from ADD, so
It doesn't matter.
I'm gonna drink that regardless.
Good for you.
But I will say I had a similar experience. I've tried medication and it didn't work well for me.
Right.
And I wasn't, I was not okay living with the rest of my life, having an identity that surrounded a disease, or that's something that was static that I couldn't overcome or make progress with. And so I wanted to, so often, and anyone who has ADHD has probably heard something like this before, and they'll probably be able to relate, but you'll hear try better, work harder, those sorts of comments, and they drive you nuts. And it's like, okay, well, I want to do that. You're telling me what to do, so how do I do that?
Right.
And so when I, in my mid-20s, it was the same kind of sentiment. And I went to Rob's group and ended up finding more concrete, practical advice of how exactly to do that. And I think after hearing what he had to say, like, the issue or the question isn't can I focus or not focus, because I can focus, and I agree with him on that point. The question is, why am I not focusing? And if that's boredom, then I should find something more exciting to work on, or I need to quit my job. There's a caveat with that in terms of my opinion with school, because I can't go to another school. Like, all schools are the same.
Yeah. Cookie cutter.
But in terms of just like, staying away from the macro component of this conversation and sticking to the micro component, I can focus, and if I'm not focusing, it's probably because I'm bored, or a number of other, or the stimuli, right? And so for me, like, I don't go to a coffee shop because I don't want all of that noise. I go to the state library because nobody wants to go to the state library, and it's almost silent in there.
Right.
And so that's how I balance my homeostasis, and that's where it works best for me. Anyway, at this point, I feel like I'm saying a bunch of stuff, but I'm like,
this is why Ascent, or when we were in Ascent, why it's so difficult for us, because we're either getting overwhelmed with way too much stimuli, or we're getting very underwhelmed with not nearly enough stimuli. So SRD people struggle with Ascent Just like astronauts struggle to break free of Earth's gravitational pull. It's a very, very difficult time for us. But the person, the SRD person who doesn't have ADHD, right, is looking for, this is the key here, ways to find stimulation. Because stimulation is what we are all about.
Right.
We're very much, as humans, but I should also let everyone know who's listening to this that there is no symptom that SRD people have that aren't shared by the rest of the world.
Right.
Nothing is specific to us. It's just the intensity, frequency, and duration of our symptomology is greater than what is experienced by the rest of the neurotypical population. But the point is that we're like junkies, we're like addicts, and only our drug of choice is stimulation. So when we're in ascent, hear my fingers drumming? When we're in ascent, we're like, come on, get it over with. I need that stimulation. Right? Like an addict who needs their fix, right? Okay, but what if we were getting that fix? Exactly. What if we were using our time in ascent to actually get the plan for the future? What if something we're doing right here, right now, during this interview, and I'm thinking, oh man, I could blank.
Right.
Wow, this is really exciting. Now I'm not going to react to it now because that'll blow the interview.
So
right? So I'm going to write it down, and then later, when I give myself permission, I'm taking care of all my responsibilities, I give myself permission to go into orbit, that's when I go crazy with it. Right?
So that becomes like a self-control thing that you've developed. And so you have brought that up twice now, the whole writing it down thing on the way to ascent.
Very important.
But you said since you have ADD, you allow yourself to do that.
No, I've lived my whole life with ADD.
Yeah, if you can try to say
Sorry.
better. So.
I've lived my whole life with ADD.
Yeah.
Right? But now, if I were to diagnose myself, I would not give myself that diagnosis. I'm an SRD person, but I no longer have ADD because I don't meet diagnostic criteria for ADD any longer. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, you've grown out of it.
Well, yeah. I wouldn't say grown out of it, but I've worked myself out of it. I've gotten so good at managing my symptomology, I no longer meet diagnostic criteria for it. Now, I'm still an SRD person. I'm still neurologically different, right?
Yeah.
But I'm managing my symptoms, so I no longer have ADD. Does that make sense?
It does. So,
hey, Chris, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you ended up saying about what I was going to say. Maybe I'm kind of, since he said more than what I thought he was going to say, I'm like redoing my opinion here, so you can cut this stuff out if you.
Kristen is my wingman.
Well, I guess I think it needs to be like specifically stated that like Rob sees ADHD as a psychological condition. That
not a neurological. I mean, the rest of you're saying right, but the rest of the world sees it as a neurological condition. What I'm suggesting is that it's actually a psychological condition that affects people like us who are neurologically different.
Can you give me an example of another psychological condition?
Well,
depression, anxiety.
Okay, so something that can be. It's not something. It's like you can work through steps for depression. You might still get to have a prone.
I like anybody else. I have good days and bad days.
Right.
And I'll be honest. There are days when honestly I'm symptomatic as all get out.
Sure.
But overall, no, not any longer. I used to be.
Yeah.
I spent most of my life that way.
Right.
But not any longer. And Kristen is the same way. Her life has improved because she's not nearly, let me rephrase, she's so much better at managing her symptomology now than she was when her journey first started.
So I guess the words that I would put to it is that ADHD is a psychological condition because it has been misunderstood, in my opinion, and that has kind of created this socially constructed issue.
Right. Of the deficit of attention in the neurotypical world.
Hold on, I'm having an intruding thought, which you can cut this part out.
Sure.
Or you can ask me about that later.
I kind of like leaving those little moments in.
What's the intruding thought?
Yeah, sure.
It could just be like, it really is just like a recalibration of like, okay, wait, somebody said something else and I want to rephrase how I want to say something. Or it could just be as simple as like saw something out the window that caught my attention.
Or something else, yeah.
But like, I normally just say like, in polite company, it's an intruding thought. And this is kind of an interesting point to make. And then I'll go back to my original thing, is that like, in my friend circle, the people that I hang out with, we have this shared language now. And so like, I feel like growing up, not only did I not have education about my brain or know how to manage my symptoms, but I also didn't have this shared language to talk about it. And it was just really a frustrating, difficult place to be.
Because you couldn't explain.
You couldn't explain yourself or what was going on, and you didn't know how to fix the problems either.
Yeah.
But I do want to really add to what we were saying before, before I forget, that ADHD being a psychological condition, going back to like this idea of it being socially constructed, is, I guess, like, so we are symptomatic from being young, right? And nobody actually gives us the tools at that age to understand our brain or manage our symptoms. We just get sent out in the hall, we get told we're bad kids, whatever the case might be.
Stuck on drugs.
Stuck on medication, not able to go out to recess often enough. Whatever the toolbox looks like for a kid, we don't get presented with that, and we don't get to utilize it. And so our symptoms continue to manifest inappropriately, or in ways that are harmful for us as well as for others. And so then, of course, that becomes a negative cycle, because the other people in our life are like, well, this behavior is not right. Like, what are you doing? And instead of it becoming this thing where they teach us how to manage it and become an empowering thing where I can take ownership and responsibility for my behavior and my symptoms, I just get critiqued and criticized.
Right.
And then my self-esteem plummets. And so this negative cycle is happening, and that's kind of what Rob is saying is ADHD, because we're not addressing what's actually going on. Now, apart from that, as an adult who has education about my brain, who knows how to manage my symptoms, I know what to do to focus, I know the environment I need, I know what I'm obsessed with, right? The state library, it's 4 minutes from here. I would consider myself SRD. And it really isn't, like, it's just something, it's just everybody has their thing in life to deal with. It's just my thing, and
Right.
it is more or less dealt with at this point.
And when it's titles mean a lot, and it's a shame that they do, but how you categorize something can really change your whole viewpoint on it. Like that study where they took the worst students and they gave them, put them in the honors classes,
Yep.
and they started performing like honors, but also the thing they did was they told the teacher that these are honor students. So then they take more time, they're a little more lenient. They think that, oh, he's an honor student, he'll get it eventually if I just work with him a little bit better. And then they took the honor kids, put them in the classroom I was in, and they told the teacher that, and the teacher's short with them and all that. So changing the perspective, flipping the language can really just change their whole perspective on a lot of things.
I mean, it's changed my self-identity. I don't look at myself as having a deficit. It's not that I don't
that
take...
term alone is diminishing.
And it's not that
Where
I don't...
am I lacking? I'm deficient in something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not that I don't take my symptomology seriously. I do. But I just don't walk around thinking that something is wrong with me and that there's nothing I can do about it.
So what I want to do at this point, if it's okay with you guys, is I want to turn the conversation a little bit.
Sure.
And to bring up the question of why. Why does this happen? Why do we live in a society where people who are born neurodivergent are left, or not just left to their own devices, but then blamed later on through life for not being able to manage our neurological differences, right? I mean, there's got to be something that is gained,
right.
Some reason why this keeps going on, why this keeps happening.
Okay. Do you have your? I have my own, not theory, but I've heard things from listening and my own research that in the 70s the school program, the general teaching on a standardized testing began, And as soon as it became a standardized testing environment, it became formulaic. Learn this, put it on the test, move that aside, next. And as that cookie cutter education system developed, that was me kind of tracing out a cookie cutter, I guess. Stimulus SRD people kind of got the shit end of the stick.
Well, it actually, you're not half wrong, but it actually started a lot earlier. It started during the time of the Industrial Revolution. That cookie cutter kind of thinking, that standardization that you're referring to, that's when that began. And when that began, something happened in society. I have yet another crazy theory that that is, those of us who are neurodivergent, that the genetic mutation that makes us the way we are actually began perhaps 2.5 million years ago. And that neurodivergent and neurotypical people used to live and work together pretty much in harmony. Not that we didn't, have our differences, not that we didn't argue and fight, all that normal stuff I'm sure went on. But the point is that we neurodivergent people were able to identify long-term qualitative ways that we could use to demonstrate our worth, our value, our importance to our neurotypical peers.
Okay.
But what happened, again, I think around the time of the Industrial Revolution, is the neurotypical community said, thanks but no thanks.
Right.
It's going to be better if we mainstream people, if we are all homogenous.
Yeah.
And ever since then, neurodivergent people have been pushed further and further and further away from who we are, from what our potential can be. And so we flounder. We spend our whole lives without any direction, without any purpose, without any meaning, whereas we used to be able to find that relatively easily. By discovering, inventing, and creating things.
Right.
We were the shamans, we were the painters, we got cave wall painters, we were the discoverers, the explorers, we were many, many things to society. One of my favorites is, I think, Benjamin Franklin and all the things that he was and did for the world. But today, it's like there's no room for us unless you work for Google.
Right.
And
or unless you're an entrepreneurial type who can sit and code and do those things.
Right, Charles Schwab, or
right.
I forgot the guy who started Virgin Airlines. Exactly.
Richard Branson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he talks about it. He's open about it that he definitely has all those learning disabilities.
Right, but the average Joe, like you were describing earlier when you were talking a little bit about your childhood and what it was like for you.
Right.
Instead of somebody saying, "Oh wow, you could," and showing you how you could use your neurological differences, the emphasis was, let's mask it, let's cover it up.
Right.
Let's give you some medication that's going to dull you so that you, again, simulate your neurotypical peers.
Well, I think one of the things I got lucky with was that I did have my dad, who didn't want me to be on the meds. He realized, because he dealt with it, and he knew I could hold a conversation with anybody for the longest amount of time. And sure, I might look away for a second, but I'm still here, I'm still present, I'm still listening. Mm-hmm. He really helped me not feel like I was deficient in any way. And then also I had a couple teachers, Mr. Abbott, who was a guidance counselor, who was also the monitor for in-school suspension, which I got a lot. But then I just sit and talk to him. He's like, "You finish your work?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "All right, let's talk about whatever." We would talk about everything and anything. It was great. And so I think I really got lucky there with a couple people who didn't see it as a problem. And then something I wanted to touch on earlier, when you said you have developed this language with your friends and how that you do things and you didn't really have an explanation for them and it frustrated you. I realized something that I do is I kind of just walk in like a whirlwind, like a Tasmanian devil, devil rather, and I just am loud, obnoxious, kind of an ass, and I make a big show of everything, and I switch the subject really quick, and I kind of just try to get everybody up on my level, which can be very frustrating to all my friends, and it's rather selfish, but sometimes it's funny. Sometimes
No, I totally get that, and I have my own ways of doing that as well, and like
riling everybody up.
Yeah, or there's just things that rile me up, and it's just the stimulation of it is incredibly enticing and fun, and
It is
I
kinda
guess
fun.
I
And
guess
the more
what
annoying, the more annoyed they become, the more fun it is for us.
Yeah, exactly.
and I guess like the point that I want to say, like one of my most important things I'd want to say to people listening to this, especially if it's a lot of new information, is that now I feel like because of the conversations I've had at the group with Rob, I have awareness of that behavior and I can choose to do it or not. So at least when I'm in a social situation where that can't happen, I'm not just symptomatic. I can
Work your way
keep that
through it.
for when it's appropriate and the time is right for me to engage in that kind of stimulation.
Instead of maybe just white knuckling it
Right.
or messing up and
Or using that behavior to avoid, sabotage, or escape from being in assent. So, for example, Kristen walks into her room, if she is being symptomatic, if she has ADHD, she's walking into that room with the intention, and it's very important to understand that, with the intention of avoiding, sabotaging, or escaping from, because she, for whatever reason, she does not want to deal with this. And so she's using inappropriate social skills to achieve that end.
of sabotaging, getting away. Getting
Yeah,
out
if
of
I
the
annoy
situation.
everybody enough, they're gonna say, "Oh well, we got to go now," or "You got to go now."
Yeah.
Right?
Kick me out of
So-
class. I'm gonna
right.
cause such a disturbance in class that you're gonna ask me to leave.
And so, oh gosh darn it, I don't have to sit through this oppressively boring algebra class. Oh
Right.
no, that's right. So this is what people with ADHD do, right?
See, that's interesting. Yeah, I never thought. I thought
That's
I was
what
just
they-
being an.
That's what they do. Now, people who are SRD who don't have ADHD will come in and we'll kick things up and we'll make jokes, the same exact stuff that Kristen was describing, only our intention is not to avoid, sabotage, or escape. Our intention is to excite and have fun
Right.
and engage and to take this boring, dull, whatever it was, and liven it up,
Yeah, make it a little more
which
fun.
is what we're so very, very good at. So it's taking, in the ADHD, is using our neurological difference to everyone's detriment,
Yeah.
but being
a
an
distraction
SRD,
in class
but
and
being
all
an SRD person and celebrating our neurodiversity,
Right.
we're using those exact same neurological differences to protect
time.
and enhance and liven things up. And that's what we are so, so very good at doing.
that. Do you mind painting that? So, SRD protects, enlightens,
Enhances, protect.
enhances,
Our others were. That's what we do.
and then
we're-
ADHD sabotages,
Avoid and escapes.
sabotage, avoid, and escape.
Yeah.
And
It's very cool.
one little
It's really great. That's a very nice sentence. That's very nice. I like that quite a bit.
and I think when Rob says intent, I think prior to my experience at his group, it was a subconscious intent. I did, that behavior, those maladaptive ways of being and not dealing with my symptoms well started when I was a kid, or whoever is having these kinds of experiences. So it's not like I woke up and I want to cause all these problems for my teachers. These behaviors to me at that point were ubiquitous. I subconsciously created.
Yeah,
Yeah.
consciously wanted to get out of class.
Right, but
I wanted
yeah,
to get out of class, but I didn't really realize that.
you don't realize why you're doing it.
Exactly. Right.
So what Kristen is saying is it happens in both ways. There's both conscious intent, but there's also subconscious intent. So I wanted, when I was growing up, and Kristen's the same way, you are too, we all wanted to do well. We all wanted to be loved. We all wanted
Best
to be
intentions, yeah, of
accepted.
course.
Yeah, but we were also resentful as hell because we knew, whether we had names or labels for them or not, we knew we were different. We knew we had this thing going on that made us unique, but yet nobody was helping us to express that to utilize it in any way. And so we're walking into these situations with an axe to grind.
Yeah, and maybe something to prove too.
Yeah.
Which is
so it's partly
at times.
conscious and partly subconscious. That's a great point, Kristen.
I don't know how much you guys touch on medication and self-medication in your group. I guess I'd like to find out, because I recently have listened to a couple podcasts on neurological and psychological disorders. I personally don't suffer from depression really, but it seems to be a plague that's sweeping the nation. So I try to study it a lot and just learn about all kinds of things that I can. And then there was a podcast I was listening to, Dr. Drew, who talked about how if you give cocaine to a person with ADD or ADHD, they'll fall asleep. If you give, certain drugs to certain people, they find their own cures. Do you guys have people in your group who are using other self-medication? Or are you guys open about that? Or I'm curious of how far the support goes, I guess.
My belief, and I have absolutely no proof for this, or any of this actually, but my belief is that we all self-medicate in one way or the other. Everybody self-medicates. Some of us do it by using, illicit substances. Some of us do it by drinking too much, eating, yeah. SRD people, again, and like I said earlier, we're addicted to stimulation. It's our drug of choice. We're all self-medicating, right? Okay, so here's the deal. If we have a passion in our life, like you in your podcast, right? What we're doing is we're investing so much of ourselves into that passion that we're getting mountains and mountains of our drug of choice.
Yeah.
We're self-medicating.
Right.
We might be making a living doing it. It might be our hobby.
Passion project.
It might be something a pastime of ours. But we're self-medicating, but we're doing it in a socially appropriate way, right? So what I believe is this. I believe that on a cultural level, on a macro level, we turn to pharmacology way too much and way too soon. What I tell all my clients is this. If you work really hard at learning how to identify, accommodate, and celebrate your neurological differences, and you're still having problems, by all means, you should go on medication.
Right, but let's try to solve the problem holistically in a Renaissance method, which is something maybe we could get into next. But celebrate. I really like how you encourage. You use positive words: celebrate, protect, enlighten, encourage. That language really, again, just makes it's very nice. It just sounds great rather than deficient, lacking, disorder.
Right.
Diagnosis.
So what the APA definition of ADHD is doing is it's pushing what's called a medical model. It's a model that says that we are broken and need to be fixed.
It's formulaic.
What we're advocating is a strength-based model, where once you learn how to utilize your strengths, the world is your oyster. Yeah. It's a very fun, very exciting, dynamic kind of process that we're trying to promote here.
Self-awareness, self-discovery.
Right. But if your world is in crisis, if everything around you, if you're hurting yourself and others, and you're on the verge of losing your job, losing your spouse, losing everything, then I'm going to be the first one to say, you need to go on medication. What we need to do is we need to stop the bleeding.
Right.
And then, now that we have the bleeding stopped,
go from there.
learn those adaptive skills.
Right.
Right? So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
But when somebody comes to me and says, "Hi, I'm here for an assessment because I'd like to go on medication," to me that's what that's saying is, I think I know what it feels like to be neurotypical, because that's what happens during our time we're in simulation, and I want to be able to mimic that all the time.
Yeah.
And that's exactly and precisely like the person who goes to a casino and says, "Last time I carried my rabbit's foot with me and I won a whole bunch of money. So this time I've got my rabbit's foot.
Right.
And now I'm going to win a whole bunch of money."
Or my jersey's inside out. Don't
can-
wash my jersey.
That's
during
right.
football
That's
season.
right.
Superstition almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We cannot ever become neurotypical. There is no drug, there is nothing that's going to make us neurotypical. So we got to learn how to utilize and manage our neurological differences, because we're going to live with them our entire lives.
Right. That's cool. I like that. So since we're gonna live with them our entire lives, what are some of the Renaissance methods you use to suggest to, so say like,
I got you. I'm ahead of you here. I came
Yeah.
prepared with
Thank you.
4 tips. Because people are always asking, like,
Right.
"So what do I do? What do I do?" The first one I have here, and this is the most important, is instead of trying to pass as being neurotypical, work at identifying, accommodating, and celebrating your neurological differences. Stop trying again to be neurotypical. You're not.
Yeah, you're fighting against the grain.
That's right. That's right. Why bang your head against the wall? The second one I have is something I call the 10-20-30-40 split, which Kristen has heard 1,000 times. But the 10-20-30-40 split is a way to achieve balance in your life. And what you do is you spend 10% of your day, of your available time every day, taking care of basic chores and responsibilities. That's 10% of your time. 20% of your time you spend crawling out of your own head. Because we SRD people, ADHD or not, we just live in our heads. We're just there all the time.
Yeah.
And we need to force ourselves to step out of our heads. And what that could mean, it could mean volunteering somewhere, it could mean taking care of somebody or something else that isn't about us.
Right.
That's 20% of our time. So you call your grandpa to find out, to make him feel good.
Yeah.
Right? You crawled out of your own head. It's not about you, it's about grandpa.
Right.
Right? Okay.
Practice a little selflessness.
There you go.
Give us
Selflessness is a beautiful way of putting it. Thank you. 30% of our time needs to be spent either earning a living and or going to school.
I love that, only 30%. That's good.
30%.
Why not, right?
Now that leaves 40% of our day, of our available time, every single solitary day. That's the biggest piece of the pie, 40%. And where do you think I say we should spend that 40%? Where would you imagine based on what we've talked about?
Orbit, right?
Exactly. Pursuing our passion.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Orbit's not so much as, when I read it, I thought of more so those moments where you check out,
Mhm.
where the stimulus isn't enough, where it's just, everything around you is kind of dulling you out, and you're just deciding to go off and think
Zoning
about
out?
Zoning out.
Right.
I thought of it as zoning out. Because
If you have
orbit-
ADHD,
Yeah.
that's exactly how you spend your orbits. Orbits are all about self-medicating if you have ADHD.
Yeah.
Orbits are about escaping.
You're bored at a party.
You're bored at a party.
You're bored at anywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
Escape.
yeah. And what do you do with it? Oh, well, I played a lot of video games.
Yeah.
Or I did some drugs, or I partied,
Or I just tried to find
It's a waste,
something.
right? Yeah, a fix.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time. But when when you're not suffering from ADHD, your orbits are spent doing things like, again, Benjamin Franklin, he invented, I don't know if you know, he invented bifocals, or he invented the world's first fire department, or he invented lightning rods.
Yeah, amazing things.
Amazing things.
While also being the ambassador for the United States, and while also
You got it.
holding court and doing all these amazing
That's
things.
right. That's right. Yeah. So 40% of our day, every day, should be spent doing those amazing things, because, again, we need that stimulation. Right? Well, if you do the 10, you do the 20, and you do the 30, and if you do them really well, then what you've done is you have earned, and that's a really important word, earned, the two commodities we need the most in this world, space and time. And that, what do we do with that space and time? We use it to pursue our passion.
And that makes all the difference.
And that makes all the difference, because now I've got my stimulation.
Right.
I didn't need to carve it out of the 10% by doing a half-assed job. I didn't need to carve it out of the 20% by being selfish. I didn't need to carve it out of the 30% by screwing up on the job.
You make time to use your superpower the way you'd like.
So it's a 10, 20, 30, 40 split. Go ahead, Kristen.
Oh, I was just going to tack on to that. I feel like these are kind of the overarching things that Rob is talking about. But like, if you've spent your whole life struggling with your symptomology, making that change is a timely process, and it takes support. And I think that the intricacies and the details of that has been what I have found at his group.
It's a practice.
Whether,
you can't all of a sudden wake up tomorrow and be
it's any process of change.
20, 30, 40. You have to work for it. You have to earn it.
Well,
it takes time to earn it.
The way it begins is when you make the decision.
The choice.
Yeah.
It comes down to choices.
Yeah, so that choice you can make today. You can say, okay, now did I do my 10% today? Did I take care of my basic chores and responsibilities? Actually, I didn't take out the garbage. So when I get home tonight, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the garbage.
Because we as SRD people have a tendency to negate,
that's right.
It takes us a while to clean the bathroom.
We don't give a crap about taking out the garbage.
No, it doesn't make a difference.
That's right. We don't care. Right? There's no intrinsic value in it for us.
No, there's no stimulus in it.
But if I'm taking out the garbage because I have this incredible passion and I can't wait to work on it and I need all the space and time I can possibly earn, man, I'm going to take out that garbage and I'm going to make sure I do it really, really well so I can fulfill those needs that I have.
A saying that's helped me, and I guess
So that can start immediately. That's my point.
Right.
It doesn't have to be something it does. Now, to get into it until it becomes a lifestyle is what Kristen is talking about.
A practice, a habit. Oh, yeah, a lifestyle.
That's right.
Exactly.
Right. And speaking of practice and habit, I'll skip down to number 4 on my list here.
What's number? Did we go over 3?
We'll get
okay,
sorry. Which I call taking ownership of your most annoying behaviors. If you remember to brush your teeth this morning, it's because you have taken ownership of brushing your teeth. When we take ownership, we are making a decision to keep practicing, that's repeating, a new behavior until it becomes a habit, and then keep repeating the habit until it becomes a routine, and then keep repeating the routine until it becomes a preference, and keep repeating the preference until it becomes what we all euphemistically call second nature, or something we don't even have to think about anymore. Which is why most of us either won't leave the house or at the very least don't feel right if we leave the house without brushing our teeth. In other words, brushing teeth has gone from being ego dystonic or foreign to who we are to become ego syntonic or part and parcel of who we are. And so it takes a long, like Kristen is saying, it takes a long time to make something ego syntonic. But the process of making something egosyntonic can start immediately.
Can you give the description of egosyntonic again, the definition?
Sure. Ego dystonic is something that's foreign to me.
Yeah.
Right? So walking out of the house without brushing my teeth is, it gives me the creeps. I don't want to do that. I feel self-conscious. I'm not comfortable with it.
Stinks.
My breath stinks. To become egosyntonic is something we're comfortable with. So when I have brushed my teeth and I even use mouthwash, I'm like, that's me. I'm more myself.
Right.
It's who I am.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. All right. So I jumped ahead and that threw you for a loop. So let's go back. And third, organize yourself by denying yourself permission to put things where they don't belong. Now that's a double negative here. Organize yourself by denying yourself permission to put things where they don't belong. An example here I always like to use, I like to pick on my wife. This morning, when I wanted to put on my glasses, I went to my desk, and sitting there on the blotter of my desk were my glasses, and I put them on.
Right.
Because I no longer give myself the option of leaving my glasses anywhere else. They're either on my face or they're on the desk.
That's hilarious.
That's it.
Because I know exactly what you're talking about, because the amount, and my roommate also suffers whatever, strengthened by, he's SRD plus ultra. But we will lose the amount of time we've spent destroying our home, trying to find something because we don't have everything has a place,
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
Right.
Him in particular, he'll lose things for days on end.
But the reason we lose things
So many debit cards.
is not because of some neurological deficit.
Right.
The reason we lose things is because we don't give a crap about putting them where they belong.
Yeah.
If we cared, like I care about my glasses, and I take ownership of that, then I leave my glasses
Right.
where they should be, and then I always know where my glasses are. Now my wife, who is neurotypical for days,
Yeah.
plus,
4 days.
right? Right? Every morning is a new adventure, you know? Where are my glasses? We don't know. Let's all look. Yay!
Let's tear up the house.
Let's tear up the house.
Get
finding-
everybody get off the couch.
Exactly.
For me, I call it the spot method. Everything has a spot.
Right.
It goes in that spot,
Yeah.
and that's just what I do. There's, like I don't argue with
And it
myself or
becomes a
debate.
habit, and it becomes
Right.
a strength, and it becomes
Yeah.
But it begins with denying ourselves permission.
and that's the double negatives. The denial. That's cool.
Denying
That's
yourself
very cool.
permission. And so the reason we're as symptomatic as we are is not because we have neurological differences. It's because we don't, another negative, double negative, we
Right.
don't deny ourselves permission. We say, oh, it's okay, I can leave my glasses wherever I want to.
Yeah, I'll remember.
Yeah,
I'll remember that I put my phone somewhere that I've never put my phone.
that's
before.
right, that's right.
Yeah, or my
Ex-
keys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a
So
mess.
we make our lives a nightmare. So organize yourself by denying yourself permission to put things
That's a huge
where they
thing.
don't belong. Fourth one, prioritize a sleep number, in quotes, to-do list that you have to complete before you go to bed, even if you have to stay up all night long to do it.
Right.
So you have a list of to-dos. Now lots of people have to-do lists.
Yeah.
The difference here is you no longer have permission not to complete your to-do list.
You have to. Yeah.
You have to do it. So the reason I call it a sleep number to-do list is because everybody's number is different. You might be able to accomplish 12 things today. I might not only be able to accomplish one or
Right.
two, right?
It all depends what we're doing too.
Right, what we're doing and who we are and what our day is, that's right.
Yeah.
So there's some days I don't put anything on my to-do list because I know my day is packed or, with, doing stuff and I'm not going to have time to get anything done. And other days when I have several things on my to-do list. But the point is, I no longer have permission to not complete that list. Now, things happen. Life happens, right?
Yeah.
And when life happens, what we do is we take one of those things that can no longer be completed because, now it's whatever, it's
Hardware store's
5,
closed.
6 o'clock, hardware store is closed, so that we put that on tomorrow's to-do list when life happens. But the way we prioritize that list, which people, SRD or not, have a great deal of difficulty with, is number one, health, anything having to do with health, welfare, and safety. So if you know you need to go to the dentist,
You gotta go.
it's number one on your priority list, right? Because it has to do with health, welfare, and safety. Second thing, anything that has a suspense attached to it. A suspense, that's an Air Force term or a military term, means there's a time limit.
Are you ex-military? Out of curiosity.
I did one tour with the Air Force, yeah.
Okay, cool.
But anyway, I guess that's where I picked up the term.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is here that if it has a suspense, it's number two on your priority list. The third on your priority list are things that are important to your others. One of the reasons why our others, that's people who are neurotypical, why they have so much difficulty with us is because we don't give a crap about them.
Right. It's very selfish.
Very selfish,
Yeah.
very ego-centered. And so
Our own world.
Right. But when number 3 on your to-do list is something that's really important to the people that you care about and love the most,
Yeah.
it changes that dynamic. Number 4 on your to-do list is everything else.
All your
Everything else that
yeah,
goes
all your
on
own
your
shit.
yeah. Okay, and so that's it. Those are those are some of the tips I came with today.
The self-awareness and the accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, the sun's in your eyes. But the accountability and the self-awareness that your practice
Mm-hmm.
encourage is and kind of prescribes is just remarkable. I really love it. It is in line with all the kind of books and, for example, like Stoicism, and a thing that I do at the end of the night is like, is my house in order?
There you go.
Which is very similar to some of the things you listed. If I didn't wake up, is everybody good? Is everything good? You know, would it stink if they found me 3 days later? Hopefully not, because I took out the garbage. Yes, it's really great. I'm very happy that we got to, I'm not wrapping it up, but I'm happy that we got to sit down and talk, and I'm happy that this kind of program and thinking exists out there in the world for SRD people.
And on that note, can we do a commercial?
By all means, please.
Okay.
Do the plug. Shameless plug. Here it comes.
Okay, so if you're interested in coming to our group, it's called the Adult Self-Help Support Group of Central Ohio, or the Adult ADHD Self-Help Support Group of Central Ohio, and you can go to meetup.com. Signing up is free. The group itself is free. We meet every other Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Our locations have changed over the years. The group has been going on for somewhere around 10, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah.
But we're currently meeting on Fissinger Boulevard in the Panera Bread Community Room
Okay.
every other Wednesday night. And
15 years.
10 or 15 years, something like that.
That's a long time, sir.
It is.
That's a long time you've been doing this. It's a long time. It's a long
He
It's
says we can't focus.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly.
It's like I keep saying, pay attention, Dan.
Right. The whole meeting is
That's right.
catching people off his face. That's fun.
Anyway, I really encourage you, if you're interested, I encourage you to come because when you walk into the room, you're immediately surrounded by people in the room, including myself and Kristen, people in the room who have the same kinds of issues you do, right? And who struggle with the same kind of things you struggle with and the same kind of neurological differences. And it's just such a wonderful feeling to be able to share and to relate and to talk about, like last meeting we talked about New Year's resolutions and ADHD, you know, and it's a really, really, I think, very, very positive, very affirming kind of place.
Yeah.
And totally non-threatening.
Right.
Very laid back, lots of joking around, lots of cursing and carrying on, but a lot of good, important information shared too.
I will say too, the symptoms and the things that we struggle with can certainly be exacerbated by other things, and I was not as fortunate to have a parent that was supportive in the same way that you described earlier, and so these, like, we can all struggle to varying degrees. And so to have that community and a space that is a safe space where I can come and just like talk about it and like get advice and escape from school or wherever these issues are coming up for me most is massively helpful.
That's great. Glad you found a place and you guys found each other.
And you're welcome to come.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, I'll definitely have to. I host trivia at Grandview Cafe, and it's becoming a sore for me because it gets a little tedious, and I'm just sitting there reading out loud questions that I have never seen before. So the dyslexia runs rampant. It's kind of boring, so I'm looking for just anything to happen to kind of rev it up. But it's also
That's
part
where
of
you need to use your neurological differences. That's where you need to call on your creativity.
to help.
That's what you. So tonight,
Yeah.
when you're in your 40% space, make that the focus. instead of watching TV, instead of doing what you normally do,
Instagram. I'm addicted to.
okay,
Instagram.
put the Instagram down
Right.
and say, okay, how can I use my wonderful, wonderful brain to turn this into something that is fun and exciting, and engaging, not just for me, but for everybody else, right?
Yeah, it's a good goal.
So that's what I hope we all learn, all us neurodivergent people learn what to do, how to spend our lives.
Spice up everybody else's.
Yeah, because it's so much fun.
It really is fun. No, it really is a good time to be the belle of the ball for a little bit. Well, it does seem like a great place to wrap it up. We did about an hour. Does that sound good to you guys?
I'm good if you're
Well, I couldn't thank you both enough. This was really great.
Thank you.
It's as great as I thought it would be. You have excellent concepts on the idea, and I hope you keep doing it for another 15 years.
Thanks.
And yeah, thank you so much. Can't
Thank
wait.
you.
And as soon as your guys' podcast is up and we figure all that out, off to the races.
Off to the races.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.